3, 2, 1.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June edition of the Garden State Java User Group. We are very happy to have Lucy Greco with us tonight. But before we formally introduce Lucy, we have a couple housekeeping things that we'd like to do. So I will start with sharing my screen and do our usual. Okay. What did I just do? Oh. Okay, there we are. So as always, we always like to thank our sponsors who have generously provided their support for all of our activities. We'll talk about what's new, a couple of nice things going on. We'll introduce Ari Waller. He's on the development relations team at JFrog, and he'll say a few words and have a giveaway like he has in the past. And then we'll introduce Lucy. So our platinum sponsor is JFrog. So Ari, thank you very much for your support. We really do appreciate it. And then our silver sponsor is Azul. We need to have somebody from them at some point and say a few words at a future meeting. We are partnered with DevNexus, and for those of you who may not be aware, this is an annual conference usually in the February timeframe. It is held in Atlanta, under normal circumstances. This year it was virtual, but I'm sure it'll be back to in person next year. And then our per meeting sponsors is JetBrains for the IntelliJ IDEA licenses and Jakarta EE for Crowdcast, which, as you know, we're not using tonight. But so we thank you for accommodating our switch. So quickly, what's new? The Jakarta EE 9.1 was released about a week or so ago, and this is the first incremental release of a Jakarta EE package. The major ones were Jakarta EE 8 and Jakarta EE 9. So there's a number of things that are available. Mostly it's support for JDK 11. Eclipse Con 2021 is scheduled for late October. The early bird call for papers has expired, but it is open until the 15th of this month. If you're interested in providing a talk, please go ahead and sign in and create an account and all that. I mentioned this the last time, but we're on the Quarkus World Tour, September 14th. We are working with one of the folks at Red Hat to set up a presentation for us. And I mentioned this last month as well, but our gsjug.org domain will actually have content instead of being redirected to the javasig.org domain. So probably next week is when that will happen. We tried for it last month, but it just didn't work out. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing and kick it over to Ari Waller.
Hey, thank you so much, Michael. I really appreciate it. Boy, I think I need to update that picture a little bit. But
well, send me one that you like, and I'll save it and use it.
there you go. Hey, as Michael said, I'm Ari Waller, and I'm the Meetup event manager for JFrog, and we are thrilled to be part of the Garden State Java User Group community for 2021. While I currently live in Atlanta, New Jersey is my old stomping ground, right off Exit 8 in Twin Rivers, if you're familiar with the area, is where I spent a good portion of my life. And I married a lady from New Jersey, from Atlantic City. So feel like I'm right at home here on Zoom. I'd like to share just a little bit about who we are. JFrog is a DevOps software company. We were founded in 2008, and many people know us best by our flagship product, Artifactory, which was written in Java. It's also considered to be the gold standard for managing your artifacts and dependencies. I'm going to share my screen here because one thing that we really want to let the Java community know about is that JFrog has a free cloud version of our software available, especially for the Java community. What's more is we want to provide some hands-on training through our monthly workshops. In fact, I realize we actually have one tomorrow. So if you're free at 3 p.m. tomorrow, Melissa McKay, Java champion, is going to be teaching this introduction to DevOps. So some people may have been programming for Java for 20, 30 years. No, not 30, but 25. And you haven't really gotten your hands in the DevOps space yet. This is a perfect opportunity to get your hands-on experience with free tools that you get to take with you. So feel free to use the QR code, and we'll also drop some links in the chat as well. So we're very excited about that, and many people from the Java community have been able to kind of get their hands in, especially with this new free software that we had come out with last year. Also, one of the things I'm really excited about as another bonus for tonight is that we have, just for attendees, for people who are here during the time frame of this meetup, a chance for you to enter to win a Raspberry Pi 4 desktop kit. You can enter with the QR code, and we'll also drop the links in the chat as well. And the winner will be selected within 2 business days. I'll contact them by email, and then once you accept the prize, then we will go ahead and share the great news with the Garden State Java community. But again, really thrilled to be part of the community this year. And with that, I am going to stop sharing and turn this back over to you, Michael.
Okay, awesome, Harry. Thank you very much. We always appreciate when you stop by to visit us. And hope we all get to meet each other at an upcoming Dev Nexus instead of virtually. So, let's see. Oh, just give me a second here to get myself organized. Okay, so Lucy Greco has been working in accessibility her whole life. She works at University of California, Berkeley, and leads the university's accessibility initiative. Lucy is blind and works at making connections between the disabled and able-bodied worlds to help make everyone's access to technology equal. So without further ado, Lucy, we really appreciate you being with us tonight, and go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you to the entire Garden State JUG community. If you give me a moment here, I will share my screen.
Meeting controls with accessibility problem. Clickable slide 2 of 17. Open the options menu but next button.
All right, so you should see my slides right now. Is that correct? Michael, do you see the slides on screen?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry, I need to confirm that. So I'm Lucy Greco. I am an accessibility evangelist, and this means that it's my role to teach people about accessibility and the benefits thereof. So with further ado.
Page changed, slide 3 of 17. Everyone is at risk.
Oh, why did it miss slide 2?
Clickable bullet statistically 1. Everyone is at risk. Slide 3 of 17. Open the next button. Open the previous page change.
There we go. Slide 2. So accessibility is for everyone is the title of my presentation, but it's something that we have to think about when we think about everyone as users. Now, I'm betting most of you here are probably not front-end developers, but in some way you affect what the front end and what the user sees in their applications, in the things that people do. People use your tools on a daily basis. I'm here to tell you that accessibility is something that we're all going to be impacted by in some way or other. And I came up with a list of 10 items that I think you're all going to find something that you may actually find distasteful or uncomfortable or just outright a pain in the neck sometimes. And these things are accessibility barriers. And when they're accessibility barriers, it's not only something I dislike, but it's something that means I can't actually use the tool you're trying to have me use, or it blocks me completely from getting the task done. So with further ado.
Open the slide picker next button. Page changed, slide 3 of 17. Everyone is at risk.
So why do you have to care about this? Well, when you think about accessibility and we're talking about people with disabilities, there is a statistic that says 1 in 4 to 1 in 5 people will have some form of disability, either temporary or permanent disability, before or after age 40. You're all going to suffer in some way a form of disability. If it's break your hand after going skiing, or break a leg, or as you get older, your eyes start to fade, your hearing starts to get a little worse. It's just a reality that we're an aging community, and the aging community tends to have more disabilities. So it's really important to think about disability and accessibility. All right, moving on.
Page changed. Slide 4 of 17. Non-consensual sounds.
So this is a really important one. Non-consensual sound. With non-consensual sound, it's a term we coined at Berkeley. It's not the official term for it, but it's audio playing without permission is what we mean by non-consensual sound. And if you were actually watching my slides in person, we would have had an audio clip playing over top of me there. But what this means is, if I go to a web page, or if I'm scrolling through my Twitter feed or through Facebook, and all of a sudden something starts blasting sound through the speakers, it's annoying for you as a person who's just watching and just reading along in Twitter or so forth. But for me, it actually is a complete blocker. When the audio clip is playing, or the sound is so loud that I can't hear my screen reader, it gets to be a barrier. If I can't stop the video from playing very quickly, it means that I can't actually use the web page. And I have to tell you, when I go to an auto playing video, or I get a video on Twitter, my instinct is to close the page and never come back, because if I can't hear to move around the page over top of my screen reader, it's really, really difficult for me to use the page. But why is that an accessibility problem for all of you? Well, how many of you are in office environments, not when we're in COVID, but in normal times? In office environments where, your coworkers might hear what's playing on your computer. Maybe you have the sound turned up for something you actually wanted to hear, and then all of a sudden it just blasts out with some video trying to sell you some product or other. So non-consensual sound is our first item that we really don't like for accessibility.
Page changed. Slide 5 of 17. Text. Can you see it?
So this slide is called Text. Can you see it? I'm going to check with the people in the room. Can you actually read this slide? Michael?
It's very different. The blue is very difficult for me, and the yellow.
Exactly. And this would be something for somebody who needs high contrast mode, incredibly difficult to read. So now I'm just going to go to a better version of this.
Page changed. Slide 6 of 17. Text. Can you see it?
So you'll see how much easier this is to read. The previous slide broke every W3C accessibility color contrast rule, whereas this slide is actually formatted to be very clear, very crisp. And I'm betting, Michael, you don't have any low vision issues, do you? So this is also one of those
readers.
things. Sorry?
I do need readers.
You do need readers, but
Yeah.
but even with those readers, that slide would have been hard to read.
Yes, correct.
And that's the point, is that, everyone has slightly different situations. And if you use good color contrast and good color combinations on your web pages, in your applications, in your printed materials you're producing, you're going to make it something that everyone can use and benefit from. Moving on.
Page changed. Slide 7 of 17. Color contrast matters for everyone.
So color contrast matters for everyone. This is just a further, distinction for this. The last one was also small text on the screen. really tiny little text, things that are really impossible to see because, maybe it's gray on gray, a dark gray on a light gray, or maybe it's just a tiny pixelated text, but this is color contrast. And color contrast also includes things like white space on a page. Maybe you have 3 or 4 different articles, and those 3 or 4 different articles aren't separated very well. The color contrast between the foreground and the background and creating good white space on a web page means that somebody can focus on one article without being distracted by the surrounding environments and have clear distinction of what the content is on your page. All right, I'm going to stop now and see if there are any questions.
Lucy, there are no questions at this time. Everybody did respond to the fact that it was a pain to their eyes to watch the colored background text. So that was it.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear we have an audience too. That's actually really important. And please, if I am going too fast, slow me down. I tend to rush these things sometimes.
I might add that we're all.
Slide 8 of
also-
17. Background video.
Sorry,
Have a-
Barry?
In the chat, we're also having a discussion about dark mode pros and cons. And I'm one of these few people who do not like dark mode because I can't see it.
And that's the whole point, is dark mode is, it actually was conceived of as an accessibility setting, but it's everyone's preference. I mean, there are people with low vision who love dark mode. There are people with low vision who hate it. And
Right.
it's all about personal preference and making it customizable. If your site's not high contrast, dark mode doesn't make any difference.
Right.
Now,
So
dark
Lucy,
mode-
just letting you know, I do suffer from visual dyslexia, and watching anything with a light background is near impossible for me after about 10 minutes of staring at it. So
Yes,
a
that
dark mode-
vibrating text.
Exactly. So
Yes.
that's why a dark mode is very important for me.
Yeah. And this is great that you guys here are perfect examples of why these things are important. If we didn't have a dark mode, people with that color dyslexia would have issues. But if we only use dark mode, Barry would not be able to use the text at all. But by having good, compliant standard or compliant, compliant color schemes. I'm sorry, my tongue's getting twisted. Everyone has an opportunity to use something like dark mode, or in the case of people with extreme low vision, they have special software that they can use to change the color scheme. There are people with low vision, for example, a certain form of low vision that actually prefer red on black. And yeah, most of us would hate that, but they actually like it. You don't have to make it for them. Their software will do it for them. But if you have a good standard compliant color scheme on your page, it's going to actually work for everyone right off the bat. So background video. How many times do you go to a web page and there's a video playing in the background underneath all the content you want? Sometimes it's not even relevant to the content that's actually on that page. It's moving around, it's flickering, it's doing all kinds of funny things. Maybe it's constantly replaying. It's just a 10 second, 20-minute loop. Well, for somebody who's low vision, that actually can break the page, their ability to read the page whatsoever. The other thing you have to think about, and the reason I placed this right after color contrast, is that the background video is actually changing the background colors. So we just talked about color contrast. Well, what if all of a sudden the video is making the background darker and lighter, and then the text that's playing on top, or that's showing on top of that, is disappearing and reappearing and moving all over the place because of the fact that the video. Don't use background video. Background video is actually something that, I never met anybody who likes it. It is usually a design choice, and it's usually a wrong design choice. Any comments on this one?
Concur 100%.
Anybody else? Anybody out there actually like the background videos that play?
Well, 9 times out of 10, it's advertising and you don't want to see it, right?
Exactly. And you can't control it when it's advertising. You know, if you're running an ad underneath your text, you know, maybe you've picked a video that actually doesn't break your color contrast, but I'm betting that the ad might break your color contrast. You just don't want that. All right, moving on.
Page changed, slide 9 of 17. Wait a minute, I was reading that.
Lucy,
Wait a minute.
there is a comment on there. I don't know. I just wanted to highlight it to you. William mentions that movie subtitles are problematic.
Movie subtitles are problematic. So subtitles versus closed captions, I didn't even cover that in this presentation, and I probably should have. The nice thing about the web is it should be something that people can turn on or off, but sometimes it can't be turned on or off. And the thing about subtitles and captions is if it's done properly, it's something that a person can control themselves. Say for a program like, I'd say within YouTube, I think you can actually decide where you want the captions to show and move them on the screen. You can go in as an individual and change what the color of your subtitles are so that you pick the color contrast that you want. It is really important to have a good background if you are burning in what we call, I think they're called open captions. Yes, sorry, I always get open and closed incorrect. Open captions are ones that are burnt into the video. If you are putting in open captions, the open captions have to have a background that makes them visible at all times. So you have to make sure that you go through your video and look at the caption track and make sure that, you know, somebody can read it and you don't all of a sudden have black text on a black background. Typically white text on a black background is what we want, but then if you put that white text on a white background in the video, you're going to need to make sure to change the background just for the caption track for the open captions. But with closed captions like we have in YouTube and other programs, a person can turn those on or off, and they can also set the color themselves and the size and the position of those on screen. I hope that addresses that comment.
Yes, I believe so. Thank you.
All right, I forgot what slide I'm on. Just one second.
Previous button. Open the slide picker list. Next button. Open the options. Clickable slide 9 of 17. Wait a minute, I was reading. Open. Next. But
all right, so this is, wait a minute, I was reading that. How many of you have visited a web page and that web page is constantly refreshing and changing? Say it's a really active news feed and you're reading an article and all of a sudden the page refreshes and the article you're reading disappears. I'm sure this doesn't happen as frequently as it used to because more and more of the news feed channels are actually becoming compliant. But it happens to me a lot because the page refresh is assuming that a person takes the standard amount of time to read, and a person using a screen reader or a person with some forms of dyslexia might not actually be able to read as fast as the developer has assumed. So pages refreshing or pages that are constantly changing and updating actually are really hard for people with various disabilities to read, but they're also, you know, they're a pain. You know, what if you're in the middle of reading the article and the phone rings and you turn away from the computer and you come back and wait a minute, where did the article go I was reading? What happened to it? You know, never assume that you know how long somebody takes to read something, and never assume that, you know, everyone can read your content as quickly as you want them to. Don't have things moving around on other parts of the screen. ADHD is more common than we think. And people with ADHD, sorry, if they're reading an article and then all of a sudden your carousel at the top of the screen is changing and moving different things in and out of view, it's drawing their eye and bringing their attention to that. And then they can't find where they were in the article. or, the video is playing off to the side that is not connected to the article, and it's just doing all kinds of funny things. Yes, static pages are boring, but when it comes to content that someone needs to read, that part of the page should be static and a person should be able to read it and finish it. It's okay to have video. I'm not opposed to video. Video is a good, engaging way to do things. But if, say, you have 3 videos on a page, that's actually really distracting and really bothersome. I'm going to take another break for comments here.
Sure. I mean, there's still discussion going on about the pros and cons of captioning. That's about it. There are people who hate white on white, of course. And so I did put in the note about open captioning, which is useful when the verbal is in a different language for a certain segment of the video. So that's when an open captioning is very useful. But that's about the discussion right now. There are no questions as of now. So
Well,
please
I'm
carry on.
glad to hear that this is an active, an active conversation. It's really important to have these active conversations, and it's really important to think about these things. Yes, actually, for different languages, open captions are critical. But the nice thing about the closed captions within YouTube is once the closed captions exist, a person can actually translate them much easier as well.
Fair point.
All right.
Open the slide. Next, but page changed. Slide 10 of 17. Time-sensitive interactions.
So time-sensitive interactions. How many times have you been filling out a form and the page timed out on you? I'm betting quite frequently. The time-sensitive interactions are actually a legal problem, believe it or not. This is the only time I'm going to talk about the legalities of accessibility in this talk. If you are actually trying to get somebody to do something and you're giving them a time limit, you are really risking the fact that that person cannot complete that task in the quickest amount of time that you've given them. So I'm not saying don't make things time sensitive. If you want to put a timeout on your application for security's sake, which more, I definitely encourage you to do. What the rule of thumb is that you need to give them enough time to do the action. If you have 10, 15, form fields for a person to fill out, you're going to need to give them 5 to 10 minutes to do that. It's best to think about each interaction that a person needs to taking about 2 minutes. And the reason we say 2 minutes, you think, oh, typing in your name, that can't take somebody 2 minutes. Actually, it can, because some people who don't have the use of their hands might be doing something like using an on-screen keyboard. And that on-screen keyboard is being controlled by them using alternative devices. And those alternative devices can be things as, simple as a head stick that is a stick that is literally mounted on the person's forehead. And they're using it to type, where they're literally bobbing their head down to type a key and then moving their head to the next key and typing. It's a very slow, painful thing. So if you have a long name and you have to, move key by key slowly on the keyboard, that takes a really long time. Or the on-screen keyboard, if any of you have ever used one, the way they work is a little highlighter moves across the first row. And when you get to the letter you want, you click a switch or hit space or enter. Maybe you have the ability to hit that one key, or maybe all they can do is tap the screen, something like that. That is also a really slow, painful process. So, think about 2 minutes for every form control that a person needs to fill out. The other thing you should always do is, if you do have a timeout, you need to acknowledge that the timeout is up and then give people 2 minutes to respond to that acknowledgement. So, your session is about to time out. click OK to continue, or if you don't click OK within 2 to 5 minutes, whatever the time frame you set is, you will automatically be timed out and your information will be lost. And the reason it's a legal requirement is because a lot of these timeouts are things that are really sensitive, like banking information or critical personal information. And if somebody's in the middle of a transaction that gets broken, they end up having to come back and they may have lost an opportunity to do something. So it's really important to think about those time sensitive. I'll give a moment here for people to respond.
Yeah, so a general acknowledgement of time-sensitive issues with, especially with long forms being given 5 minutes to fill, even for a non-impaired person of any sort, is problematic. That is the general consensus. That's at least one comment I read on YouTube from Neha.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a better rule is don't give people a page of like 10, 15, 20 form fields. Maybe make them several pages where there's 2 or 3 things to do on the page, just so that they can hit next and submit back to the server side. But I mean, you've got to give people the ability to extend that. What if they've gone off to find that bank account number that they need to put in, and it takes them longer to find that bank account than your timeout gives them? It's really important to give them the ability to extend their time on the page.
Yeah, the frustrating thing for us at home here has been reservations for airlines and like ShopRite. And sometimes you get blown out because you're taking too long, apparently, or something like that. That's been our experience, yeah.
And without a warning.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So,
whereas if they give you a warning, you can just hit, no, give me more time. No, give me more time. I'm so glad that you guys are finding that my accessibility problems are actually things that do affect everyone. All right, moving on.
That is very true.
Go ahead.
No, that's very true. Acknowledged.
Yep. Excellent.
Page changed. Slide 11 of 17. Field labels.
Field labels. So this is a very critical one. This is one that sadly you'd think by now we would have solved, but we have not solved. I can't tell you how many times I go to a forum and all I get is edit, edit, edit. The thing that's really key about that for, sighted people is, yeah, maybe they have a label that's visible there on the screen. But say we have, a fairly wide screen with field labels that are really far away from the field that they're labeling on the screen. Well, or maybe that what they've used is that silly dimmed, it's right here on the screen in front of me, and I can't remember the term right now. I'm just drawing a blank.
Placeholder text.
Thank you, placeholder text. Thank you. I'm sorry. So yeah, maybe they have placeholder text, and that placeholder text is really dim in the field. Or maybe that placeholder text is actually not a label. Maybe it's an example of, say, a phone number. And all the person gets is a bunch of numbers and they don't know what they're supposed to actually put there. Maybe that number was supposed to be a social security number. And who's going to tell that it's a phone number if all is in the field is a bunch of numbers? So it's really important to have good, clear labels and have those labels be programmatically associated with the field. If I was talking to a bunch of people creating HTML, I would say to them, use an ID for that field and have a good label for that ID and have unique IDs. But, the generic way of saying that is, if you have a field, make sure that there is a label that is associated with that field that says exactly what that needs to be in there and make it visible. Because yes, if you have it for a screen reader, there's a reason that somebody else needs that label too. Maybe you've got this whole big field and you've just, you've kind of gone through the form and you missed one because you said, I'll come back to that later when I think about the answer. And now that you've actually tabbed in the field and the placeholder is gone, now it's just an empty field and you don't know what's supposed to be in there. And the only way to get that placeholder back is to refresh the page And if you refresh the page, you lose all the contents that you've already put in yourself. So yeah, good field labels that are very clearly associated with the information. You know, a button should have a label that tells you what the button does, plain and simple. An edit field should have a label that's really close to it and is clearly, you know, I can't tell you how many times we've seen the pattern where there is 2 edit fields on one line. The label for those 2 edit fields are below them. Then the labels for the next 2 edit fields are below those, but they're so close to each other, it's really hard to tell which edit label belongs to which field. Keep your pattern consistent, keep it clear, make sure everyone knows where those labels are. And make sure that people know what the things they're doing. You know, a checkbox. Say that checkbox is a terms and conditions. You know, if the label for the checkbox is I agree, well, that's not actually effective, because what that really should be is I agree that the following terms and conditions, ... You know, continue reading, add them to the label. Then the person knows that they're checking that box to agree to, you know, I'll give you my next born child.
That's very funny, Lucy. There are 2 things that I wanted to share right here. William writes that adding tooltips is key in addition to labels, which I believe is also useful for
Yes.
other people other than just visually impaired. And the second thing that I wanted to also include was navigability, not just by mouse, but by keyboard as well. So certain fields you can only click your mouse on, keyboard has no action on it. A drop-down field, for example, without the ability to type it in, is a nightmare.
All right, so someone needs to get me his contact information and he gets one of my Punisher stickers, because that is an accessibility thing for sure. Definitely keyboard navigation is critical.
Oh, that was me.
If a person can't tab to it, a person can't move through the form with a keyboard, that person we were talking about before with the on-screen keyboard or the head pointer would not be able to get to it either. You know, what if, you know, the battery on your mouse has died? This is a common problem. Our batteries on our mice die all the time nowadays, don't they?
Exactly. No, this is a problem I face, especially given that most forms are white background. And I just simply use a keyboard because it's very hard for me to go look and navigate, click. And it doesn't work on, even including my bank, it doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, keyboard navigation is something I could do an entire presentation on, and it's actually something I teach in my talk that is, you know, how to test your own content for accessibility. So if anybody wants, you know, that talk, please get in touch with me and we can do that talk at another day. So, but yes, keyboard navigability is so critical in so many situations. Any more comments?
No, that was about it. So I'm gonna look forward to my sticker, the Punisher sticker. Thank you.
Oh, okay, you get a Punisher sticker. I'll just email me the address I have to send it to.
I appreciate that.
Page changed. Slide 12 of 17. Images. What are they and what's in them?
Images. What are they and what's in them? So images are the bane of people who are blind and visually impaired on the web, but not because we don't see them, but because people don't tell us what they do and what they're there for. You know, they don't tell us what the image is. Blind people actually like to know about pictures. They want to know what the images are that people have. More importantly, they want to know why those images are there. What do they do? You know, I am actually an unusual person who's blind because I actually want my pages to, I don't care about the images, but other blind people really want to know what the images are. They want to know what the message is those images are conveying. Why did you pick to put an image on your page? There's a reason for it. And it's an important reason. So make that the message that the image conveys to a person with a screen reader. Using alt text on an image is critical. There's another reason it's critical. For Google to know what your image is, you actually need to tell it in the alt text. My team at Berkeley has a saying, Google is blind. And that's because the crawlers for Google search your web page and look for the exact same metadata that the screen reader uses to talk to me and tell me what the things are on your web page. So if you use, basic accessibility rules for your images, Google will also know that those images, what those images are, and be able to, increase your SEO for those particular images. And there's several other things that we could cover in accessibility that, are also enhance your SEO, but the images are key ones. But writing alt text, what is alt text? What does it mean? It's the text that the screen reader reads when it hits the image. So, have something there that tells me that that image is there. If it's, picture of Mike or picture of Chandra, let me know that that's what's there. Don't say picture of, but maybe say, Mike standing smiling after receiving an award or something like that. Tell me what that image is and be as concise as possible about it. There's several really good blog posts out there about how to write good alt text. The one I like best is one from WebAIM, Web Accessibility in Mind. They have a really good article on writing good alt text if you're interested. All right. Oh, and by the way, if somebody turns off images or the page takes forever to load because it has a lot of images, the alt text shows up first. So having good alt text, if they're for some reason not able to get those images loaded, they'll still know what those images are doing.
So one pet peeve from my own side, if you don't mind me interjecting, is the alt text is only visible to screen readers and not to people who have, no vision problems. It would be great if it was generally accessible to everybody, because sometimes I look at an image, I still don't understand what the image is about. So maybe a tooltip, hover over alt text would be great for even people who are endowed with vision.
So if alt text is done properly, it should actually be visible. Like I said, when you turn graphics off, when you turn images off. But I agree with you. Alt text should be visible for everyone. My husband has created his own little script for Twitter to see what the alt text is people add to their images in Twitter. Mostly so he can get after people who should know better to make sure that they do, add alt text to their images. But it is really important to have something like that. Twitter definitely has a problem right now in that the alt text is, first of all, hard for people to create, but also, I am the only one who gets to see that. You don't get to see that. And I think it's actually really important for you to see what the alt text is. There's this one person on Twitter that I follow that does the best alt descriptions. And I think if you were able to read what his alt descriptions were, you would get so much more from his pictures than just what he's, just the picture itself. I mean, they're humorous, they're beautiful. They really make me think, of what he's feeling when he took that picture and put it up on Twitter. If you just see a picture of a bird, which is what most of his pictures are, just another bird, what's he talking about? But him saying, in his alt text, a bird hovering on the edge of the window, about to leap out into the air. It's much more emotional. It's much more, full of energy and full of feeling and passion. I mean, that person does amazing job with his alt text. I mean, he has pictures of his children, and it's like, describing the child being tired at the end of the day. We don't know the child. We might not know that the child is tired, but him saying it's tired helps us understand what he's trying to show in the picture. So
Lucy,
yes,
a
there
quick
should
question.
be. Sorry, go ahead.
A quick question. I do make use of the alt attribute in images in my web pages, but I think there's a second one. I think it's called title within there, and I'm trying to find an example. Because I'm not quite. Do they do the same thing, or are they different in some way?
So the title is something that will show up as kind of a tooltip. but the title actually does not
okay.
get read by the screen reader.
Oh, okay. That's what it is. Maybe it's the tooltip that comes up if you hover over the image.
Yes, that's
Okay,
exactly it.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
If only the title is there, one of the screen readers will read the title, but not all screen readers will read that title.
Okay. It's good to know.
And you and I could do some testing offline if you want.
Sure.
How many of you, just as a quick poll, actually do add alt text to your images on Twitter and know where it is located?
Oh, on Twitter. No, not on Twitter. Yeah.
I do on some,
absolutely do.
I do on some services like LinkedIn. I've never tried to do it on Twitter, actually.
I absolutely put it on every single tweet.
I know.
That is not a GIF. If it's a GIF image, I avoid. If it's a picture I'm posting, absolutely yes.
I think the GIFs now actually have automated alt text on them. I know that Twitter has done something recently with GIFs to make them much more accessible, and it's pretty cool. So in Twitter, just so everyone knows, you have to go into settings and turn on the ability to create alt text, and it drives me crazy because that means people don't know that they're actually missing a feature to their images. Then once you've done that, when you've got the photo in Twitter, it gives you a field to click in to type in your alt text. But until you turn on the setting, it's off by default. You know, people are just happily tweeting unlabeled images.
I think that's why I never noticed it. Like on LinkedIn, I think it might be enabled by default, I guess, because I've never noticed the setting in Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. So go into your settings and go into accessibility and turn on enable alt or the ability to add alt text. I mean, it's just crazy. Why isn't it on by default?
Absolutely. Now I will.
Oh, and here's the real bonus to it. Alt text for images on Twitter are 1,000 characters.
Yep, very descriptive. So Mike Digo is on, and hello, Mike. He mentions that the easiest way to see alt text is to use and inspect accessibility properties on Firefox. Others have similar settings in other browsers, but that's the easiest way to look at alternate text.
Yeah, which, you know, you have to be a developer and know where it exists to do that.
And Mike is an awesome developer.
He's a nerd. All right. The only other thing I didn't mention about images that's really critical is images of text. For God's sakes, please don't do images of text. If you absolutely have to do an image of text, the alt text should be the text in the image. It's really brutal if you don't have that text in any other form. You know, we are getting AIs that can actually recognize images nowadays and recognize the text, but they're not perfect. If you want to put an image of text up, you better be adding alt text to that image. The thing to know about that is that that text then can't be magnified. It cannot have its color changed and its background changed because it's an image, and all the color changes and backgrounds don't adjust to the images. It's just, again, it's also not Google searchable if you have an image of text. Don't do it.
It is interesting that you mention it. There are certain PDF files that show up only as images, and you cannot actually scrape the text out of them. Is that part of the same problem?
That is exactly the same problem. I hate PDFs for that reason. PDFs have so many other accessibility problems, but 90% of the PDFs are those kinds of PDFs. And what happens is those PDFs are literally, somebody went to a photocopier, scanned it, and created a PDF. It is literally just a picture of the page. You also can't enlarge it. You can't, cut and paste out of that PDF. It's exactly the same problem.
Sometimes I can copy text out of PDFs, but it's unreliable.
Exactly.
I get all
the chances are the ones you can are more accessible than the ones that are not.
Yeah.
Right. No further questions. General agreement. One question that Neha raises is an application like Instagram compatible for alt text, given that it has completely a pictures only application?
They do have the ability to add alt text in Instagram now. And yes, there are plenty of blind people who have Instagram accounts and post, and plenty of blind people who actually, browse other people's Instagrams to see the pictures. It's the social thing. It's not the picture itself that's important. It's, knowing what your friends find interesting or fun or beautiful or what have you. I'm actually considering opening an Instagram account, but I haven't done so yet.
Well, you seem to have a taste for it, given your backgrounds look very appealing. So you should definitely do that.
Okay, I'll work on that. All right, here we go.
Page changed, slide 13 of 17. What does that little cute man mean?
All right, so this one was one I wanted to have fun with. What does that little cute man mean? How many times have you gone somewhere or maybe used an application and the icons that they chose are absolutely meaningless to you? It's like, it's a sheet of paper. Does that sheet of paper mean it's edit? It's a button to edit? Is the sheet of paper, a blank sheet of paper? Do I have to use that to clear? What does the icon mean? This is really an extension of the last rule, but it's kind of a more important one because it's all about user understanding and user comprehension. If you've got a little picture of a guy there, what am I supposed to do? What happens when I click that little man? What does it mean? Is that, the say hello? What is that? Tell me more about that image. Does anyone have any really good examples of like iconography they don't understand that they want to share?
I have a major pet peeve about this, and it involves the menu bar in Mac OS. I have been looking for years for a way of hovering over those icons to find out what they are. And
I love it. I love it.
can never find it.
Well, maybe
I've got 30 icons across my menu bar. I know what a few of them mean. Otherwise, it's hunt and peck.
And the really sad thing is, Barry, is if you actually turned VoiceOver on, which is the built-in Mac screen reader, it would probably tell you what those icons are, but you don't want to use that on a regular basis because it's actually really irritating. I love it. Yes, having good labels on those, clear labels telling you what those icons mean. What's the difference between the pencil and the pen icon, for example? I think the pencil is an actual eraser, and the pen is actually, start drawing. I don't know.
So Lucy, there's a very interesting question that's coming about. What about the use of, this is from William, and his question is, what about the emojis and emote icons?
So the really nice thing is that, here I'm drawing a blank again, the consortium that decides what emojis and icons are, what is that?
Yeah, it's not W3C, it's
no, it's ISO. I think it's anyways, the people who decide what icons or what emojis are actually, a part of the standard.
It's ISO 9001.
Yes, thank you.
Right? Okay.
Thank you. Unicode, the Unicode consortium, who decides what the which emojis are approved and which ones are not. They actually come up with what the label for that emoji is. So if I go through with my screen reader and find a emoji, it'll actually read me the title of it. So it will actually say, finger pointing down, finger pointing left, finger pointing right, what have you, whichever one of the finger pointings you choose, or, smiling face with funny eyes, or, smiling face upside down. All those things actually have names and labels, and all the screen readers know the Unicode names for those so that it actually can go through and read them. So if you send me a message with a bunch of emojis in it, my screen reader will read those. However, I'm not that hip, so I might not know what they're supposed to, what they mean to have those in there. So it's best to, make sure that the person who you're sending emojis to actually is hip to what the meaning and point of those emojis are. We had some friends who were, completely amused with sending each other emojis, and they were about 6 months in, and then all of a sudden one of them found out what a couple of the emojis meant culturally, and was like, oh my god, did I ever send that person that emoji? I hope not, because it wasn't that kind of relationship. But yes, emojis do have labels, so I will get frowny face, or laughing, smiley face with laughing, all that kind of thing is available to me. And I can choose them from the emoji picker the same way. And reactions. Reactions also have good labels. So, in Twitter, when people react, I can actually get, somebody reacted with heart, somebody reacted with applause, so forth.
That's very good to know. Thank you.
Accessibility is getting better. It just takes a long time. All right, we're going to move on to the next slide.
Page changed, slide 14 of 17. Links. Where do they go? And is that really a link?
Links, where do they go? And is that really a link? So my pet peeve on the internet, this is the one thing that drives me the most crazy. And at work, if somebody sends me an email with one of these links, they're guaranteed to get, attacked by my alias, the Punisher, because I hate these links that say click here, or links that say more and nothing else, because a screen reader user will only hear the link, and they'll hear the link if it says here or more, and not actually hear the words that are around it and the context around it. So if you don't put good link text on the link, it's absolutely meaningless to me. We're going to try, if we have time at the end here, to do a quick screen reader demo, and I'm going to show you, the way most blind people would navigate a page really quickly. If you don't have good link text, they're not going to know where your links go. More importantly, if you have several here's or click here's on your page, and they all go to different places, say I call up your support line and I say, how do I find the appropriate option to do X, Y, or Z? And they'll say, oh, click on, oh, wait, there's 6 click here's. Which one do I click on? Or they'll might say something like, it's in the paragraph about, but, I can only find the link. I can't find that. It's also an SEO thing again. If you put your proper link text on, Google knows where your link is going. We had a rule at Berkeley where it was, everybody was putting FAQs on their pages, and they had menus, and in each menu they had an FAQ. So it was, FAQ for faculty, FAQ for students, FAQ for parents. Well, if you had those FAQ links only saying FAQ, and you brought up a list of the links on that page, you'd had 3 links that said FAQ. Which one would go where? That was really hard to know as a screen reader user. And it's also really hard for somebody who's maybe just looking at the links. Maybe you're using a really small screen and you've only got like a tiny little bit of screen to see the link on it. Or if you're viewing a page and you've got a bunch of things that are exactly the same that are links, it's really hard to tell, which one do you click to do what. And if you do things like change the style of links, it's been a thing in the past couple of years to start removing the underline from links because, well, nobody likes the underline from links. Well, how does somebody then know it's a link? What if what if it doesn't stand out enough as the link? That's a bad thing.
Yeah, so that brings up a good point, Lucy, because even on our own, user group website. I'm using the Bootstrap and the buttons.
Yep.
And I have multiple instances where it says learn more.
Yeah,
on
and
on
all
the
it needs
page
to be
too.
is learn more about what.
Okay, so basically a more descriptive. Even in
Exactly.
buttons too, right? So in buttons too, does that make a difference or?
100% it makes a difference.
Okay,
I mean, I can navigate a page by button if I wanted to. And if they were all learn more, I wouldn't know which one went where.
right.
So,
Right.
Lucy, I think I'm going to further aggravate you by asking you this. What is your opinion of links that are embedded in images? So an image representing a link that says click here.
If it says click here, you're going to get me mad. If you have a good label on that link text.
Yeah.
Well, if
that's
it's an image, I don't
excellent.
know. Yeah, so there are sites where there's just images with buttons, and when you click them, they navigate. And the text is embedded on the image. It's not a text that you can parse through a screen reader.
Yeah, so what you have to do is you have to put alt text on the image of the button, and that becomes the link text as well. It's actually, you can do a decorative image in some cases, but if that image is a link, you must 100% put alt text on it. Otherwise, what the screen reader will get is the actual URL of the destination. And reading a URL of a destination sometimes is impossible for a human to parse. Say it was the server page that you wanted the person loading. If you click the image, you don't want them to know that server address. You want them to know that, it's the page of content that you want them to see once they click that image. It is possible to label those images. You have to label the image, and then if you put a link in that image, the label is what's read as the link text as well as the image text. You didn't irritate me. It's a good question.
Right. I see no further questions on the chat right now, but most people acknowledging and agreeing with what you're saying in terms of accessibility when it comes to links and I guess alternate texts.
Yeah. And if your designers tell you that you need to remove the underline from your links, tell them that they need to design the links that they're still distinguishable and very clear. I'm not insisting on the underline. I'm just saying that a person needs to know that that is something that can be actionable.
Page changed, slide 15 of 17. How do I make this work?
How do I make this work? So say you're in a brand new application and there is a bunch of arrows and a bunch of buttons, and you don't have good, clear, definite text that tells you what to do. This is just a general, common sense. Make your interactions for people easy to understand. Give people good, clear guidance. Make sure that you have good descriptions of what people need to do. If it's a drag and drop interaction and you're trying to tell people, be sure to tell them to, that you have to click and hold and move the item over to the new location. It's, if you expect somebody to understand what to do just by looking at your diagram or looking at your page, you're going to lose a lot of people. Just make your good, clear definition, make sure that the interactions are simple and easy to do. If it's a complex task, break it down and make it easy to understand and comprehensible for the lowest common denominator. I'm not even going to take questions on that one. It's just a very simple, how do I finish this task? Say it's a long application form, let me know that these are the 10 steps I'm going to do, and then breadcrumb those and make it clear that these are the steps I've done.
Page changed, slide 16 of 17. Questions?
All right, so this is just an open forum. Now this is a chance for people to ask me questions, and we'll take it from there.
So I'm monitoring the YouTube chat, and as and when questions appear, I'll read them out to you.
Excellent.
There is a slight delay for the YouTube for it to appear.
Yes. I mean, we've told people that it's going to be questions. I am going to stop sharing my screen temporarily and see if I can prepare for a quick screen reader demo.
Press S to exit full screen alert.
All right.
Meeting controls. Meeting controls.
So Lucy, there's already a question for you, and the question is about, is there any comment on Google's material design?
Google has worked on making it as accessible as possible, but Google rushes sometimes, and some parts are accessible, some parts are not. If you find the best thing to do is when you're working with any kind of framework, any kind of tool, try and find a person with a disability. Try and get that person to help you, test it and work through it. I mean, I know some of the material design components are very accessible, and I know other ones are just absolute nightmares to work with.
Understood.
All right.
That's a great answer. And the last question that I see right now is, does color contrast mean people should prefer black backgrounds?
No. So color contrast is a distinctive difference between the foreground, background, and surrounding areas. So the W3C guidelines say, and I'm going to get this wrong because the standard just changed, that small text needs to be 4.5, a difference of 4.5 from the foreground to the background. And all your developer tools have the ability to get you good color contrast checking. If you go to Lighthouse, for example, in Google Chrome, it has a color contrast built into it. I believe the Firefox developer tools also have a good color contrast tester built in. And what you're looking for is you're looking at a ratio of 4.5 to 1. So that the number ratio ends up being, a good contrast to each other, a light blue to black type of thing. You can go in and get the number, and you're looking for that proper ratio. And like I said, I might have gotten the number wrong. It says large text, for example, or, title text only needs to be a 3.1 ratio. Some of the really, the one in Lighthouse in Chrome is really good. And a dear friend of mine actually developed the algorithm to do that testing. And it will actually tell you what the actual numbers are you should change to if you want to keep the colors, but just make the contrast work better. You can do any color combination, but really what you're looking for is that one color will stand out on top of the other, and use the testing tools. There's, if you look for color contrast testers, there's hundreds of them out there.
Great. William does ask an interesting question. Are there any textbooks or material out there that we could sort of study from, more of what you're just sharing with us?
Yes. So on my last slide, I have a link to the website we've created at Berkeley. I was going to, once I get the screen reader back up again, I'll share that slide. But WebAIM, WEBAIM.org is probably the most informative resource for web accessibility. Sadly, there's very little information on application accessibility, how to make apps and applets accessible. Both Google and Apple, though, have really good guidelines for developers on mobile app accessibility. And Microsoft has a tool that will work in the Windows environment to test desktop applications called Accessibility Insights. And Accessibility Insights actually comes in the flavor of application or website. And it's actually one of my favorite tools. It's free, so any developer can use it to test their application. I don't know of one that's similar for Apple. that you can use to test your stuff and look through it. But they all have really good information built into the tools as well that explain why it's a violation. So for example, there is an accessibility scanner that Google has that you use on an Android app or an iOS app. Actually, it works on both. And it will look at your application and say, oh, you know, the touch targets on this app are too small. And it will explain why touch targets are really important. So as soon as you start looking at some of these free tools, the free tools include, you know, piles and piles of information about what the violations are. On my website at Berkeley, which I'm going to share in just a moment here, we actually have a do-it-yourself checklist that walks you through the things that you can do, even if you don't know a thing about accessibility, to make sure your stuff is accessible. So let me get my screen share working here.
Meeting controls window.
So
The video thumbnails are minimized to optimize full screen video clip screen sharing. Alert.
you should now hear my screen reader. Is that correct?
Mute. Currently
That is
unmuted.
correct.
OK button.
Yes.
All right, so let's go to the slide presentation.
Accessibility problems affect everyone. Google Slides. Google Chrome. Accessibility problems affect everyone. Google.
And I'm just going to move to my next slide.
Page changed. Slide 17 of 17. Thank you for caring about accessibility.
And that's my closing slide. So I'm going to let you all take a screenshot of that if you'd like, for the URLs. And then I'm going to go to a web page and show you how I browse a web page with a screen
So
reader.
Lucy, I'm actually going to type these into the chat as well.
Perfect. So let me know when you've got them and I'll move on.
Done.
All right, so I'm going to now go to a web page.
Not supported in this document.
Yes, it is.
Accessibility problems affect toolbar. Address insert W selection removed. Access Berkeley Edu Home selected.
I use our web page because I like showing what good experiences are, not bad experiences.
Web access Berkeley Edu Home selected. Home web access. Skip links navigation landmark.
I'm going to slow this down a little bit for you.
Voice eloquence at rate 50. Rate 45.
And I'm going to start at the top of the page.
Clickable skip links navigation landmark link skip to main
And start reading.
Link skip to main content. Banner landmark link UC Berkeleyist productivity and collaboration services. Heading level 1 web access. Site navigation landmark site-wide search landmark search terms. Edit search this site button submit search. List with 6 items visited link current page home. Clickable collapsed link web accessibility at UC. Clickable collapsed link evaluating your site. Clickable collapsed link resources. Clickable collapsed link about. Link fact out of list. List with 1 items link web platform services out of list. Main landmark link unlabeled graphic to get missing image descriptions. Open the context menu. Link heading level 2 accessibility is usability. Link unlabeled graphic. Image credit. Keegan Hauser. Heading level 2 what does web accessibility mean for you? The University of California's Link Information Technology Accessibility Policy. Effective.
And I think I'm going to go back to work tomorrow and scream at somebody for those 2 unlabeled graphics, because when I looked at this page 3 days ago, they were labeled. So you heard a bunch of things there. Normally when I'm doing this demo, I'm giving people a chance to be interactive and asking them what they heard. But today I'm just going to be easy on you and tell you the kind of things that we've done to this page to make it more accessible. You heard that our menu bar is all a bunch of collapsed items, and the screen reader told me that it is clickable and that I can expand it and collapse it. It tells me the state it's currently in. We've got headings here.
What does this mean for Berkeley? Heading level 3.
So I can navigate the page by heading and see the different outline of the page by doing that.
About this site heading level 4. Web accessibility at Berkeley heading level 2.
So see, we've got a bunch of different headings. I can just skip through those. Let me show you that menu now.
Banner UC Berkeley link. Skip links navigation landmark. Skip to main content. Clickable evaluating your site collapsed link.
So you see it said collapsed. I'm going to now expand it.
Expanded.
And it told me it was expanded. And if I move away from it right now,
Clickable web accessibility at UC collapsed link. Evaluating your site closed.
it tells me that the site closed behind me. So nothing happens on this page without me knowing what's happening dynamically on the page as I move through. And when we talked about links, to go back to our talk in the earlier,
Elements list dialog. Tree view. Web accessibility at UC. Collapsed 4 of 55 level 0.
so remember how I said that links are seen out of context? Well, the out of context links,
Evaluate.
if these links didn't have good labels on them, if they were click here to see this or click here or click there or whatever, I would not know when I'm in this link because all I'm doing is arrowing through the list.
Resources. Collapsed 6 of about. Collapse FAQ 8 of 55 level 0. Web platform services 9 of 55 level 0.
So all those links are really clear. And let me bring you now to my favorite page.
So
Can
Lucy,
is
there's
waiting for
something
your
on your
question.
screen right now that is preventing us from seeing the page. You have a
Oh.
pop-up of some sort on your screen.
Oh,
We don't see what the pop-up is. It's just a grayed out square.
oh,
Home web.
one moment.
Meeting controls window.
My fault.
Audio settings drop. Home web access.
Can you still hear the screen reader?
Evaluating your
Yes.
Okay. I shared the window. I did not share the actual computer, the whole desktop.
clickable resources collapsed link. Elements list dial.
There we go. That is my links list. I'm sorry.
No worries. No worries.
So what I did was that was a complete mistake on my part. In Zoom, I have the choice of sharing my window or sharing my entire desktop. When I
Home
want to
web access
demonstrate
Google
the screen
Chrome.
reader, I have to share the entire desktop because, of course, it's a separate application.
Elements list dialog.
Now it makes a
About.
lot more
Collapse.
sense what you're talking about. Now we understand how you navigate.
Sorry, you caught me on that one. That was a beginner mistake. I should have remembered that I was doing the screen reader demo.
That is fine. Nothing is lost. We now get to see how you view these things. So it was a good experience. We first heard it.
Okay,
Now we are
good.
looking at it.
good. Now I'm going to show you my favorite page here.
Pecan is waiting for your questions. Home web access Google Chrome. Home web access.
And I just like this page because it gives me a warm, fuzzy feeling, and it's an adorable page, but it's also a good way to see how graphics should be labeled.
Clickable main landmark. Pecan is ready for your questions. Graphic. Pecan is ready for your questions.
So that is a very sweet picture of two guide dogs ago of mine. That was taken about 3 weeks before she retired. And, we thought about how to label that image. And since this was a ask, like a Dear Abby type page, we figured we want the label for that one. Pecan is ready for your call. We didn't want to label it, dog on a table with a phone between its legs. We wanted you to hear the message that we had, which was, call the dog and ask it a question, and we will be willing to help you, and she will give you the best information she can. And, it was cute. It was a fun activity, but, we wanted to just have fun with this, and that's what the alt text was. And you saw on the previous page, let me go back to the previous page.
Home web back. Clickable banner. Collapsed link resources. Main landmarks. Attain Prove logo graphic.
So there is a link, and that link is actually something that that is an image with alt text.
Pecan is waiting for your questions. Graphic visited link.
All right, so that's all I have to share. I'm now here
Desktop.
till you guys.
Meeting controls. Meeting.
You guys tell me to go away.
We would not want to tell you that. But one question that I do have, which often comes up, is people use hashtags and they don't camel case their hashtags, which probably causes you a lot of grief.
I get the word hash before it, so I know it's a hashtag. But yes, camel case does help immensely because the screen reader will read the separate words for camel case.
Do you also prefer people to use an underscore or a hyphenation in their hashtags if it's allowed, or that's not required if we uppercase or camel case?
I mean, the underscore definitely would help, even a period, but I don't think any hashtagging rules allow for periods.
Got it. So at least camel casing is something that we should all be aware of when we're using multi-word hashtags.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Very cool. I'm going to check with the audience to see if there are any other questions.
And while you're checking there, the hashtag for accessibility, in case anybody didn't know, is A11Y.
Oh, I've heard that. Yeah, yeah.
So if you wanted to tweet, if you wanted to look up anything on Twitter or any of the multimedia, social media networks, it's hash A11Y for accessibility.
So Lucy, I do have to let you know, we're getting a lot of positive comments about your talk. Thanking you for such a great presentation. So it's very nice reading these. And I just got a hashtag thank you for you.
Excellent. Thank you. I really so glad to hear that people were willing to come out to learn about accessibility. I mean, it's my big passion. I didn't get to push my my favorite topic today, but which is hire people with disabilities to be on your team. Sorry, I had to say it.
Absolutely.
But you know, I'm so glad to have such a large group of people interested in accessibility and interested enough to come and spend, you know, some of your Wednesday night to hear about how to be more accessible.
This was an awesome presentation, Lucy. Thank you very much. I mean, it was an absolute joy having you here with us tonight.
Wait,
And I learned a lot, and you know, I'm going to make some changes as a result.
is it Wednesday? Did I lose a day?
No, it's Tuesday.
Oh, it's Tuesday. It's me. I'm sorry. I lost a day.
Sometimes I lose days. I don't know.
And you know, if anyone is interested, you know, once we start going back to in person, I would love to do some training. I have several training modules that I offer for people.
Awesome.
How to test your own work is a really fun workshop I offer.
Right. There's one tool that I use, which is not so much for the completely visual impaired, but macOS does give you something called Color Oracle. And this basically helps me test for any color blindness in the color contrast that I use in my apps or I guess, Android apps.
It's a great tool. It's a fantastic tool. Yeah, as an FYI for everyone, 13% of all men are colorblind.
Oh.
So red-green colorblind specifically. So if you use red and green a lot, think about that.
Yeah, one of the most important indicators if you use red and green is also have some patterns in there that make it distinct about what you're trying to communicate. And of course, labeling and alternate text.
Exactly.
Very cool. I think we are also out of questions at this point. I did ask. I don't see any other questions coming up. Oh, wait. There is a question from William. We heard about the ratio for men. What is the percent of women who have color blindness?
I mean, there's no full hard facts on color blindness in general. All we know is that 13% of men are red-green colorblind. There are other forms of color blindness, but we don't have any percentages in the population. We do know that the World Health Organization says there is over 21 people with or 21 million people with disabilities. I think that's in the United States alone. I mean,
yeah.
if you think 11% of all people have disabilities today, and that number increases as we age as a population. Remember those boomers, they're all starting to get to the point where they're starting to lose their vision, their hearing's getting a little harder.
Well, there's a couple of us here on the
Yeah, I'm one of them.
directorship
I'm not a
list.
boomer, but I'm definitely aging.
Well, Mike, I'll let you have it. I think my
Okay.
role is done, but thank you so much, Lucy.
Just a couple of quick things. I'll share my screen again here, and just basically what's some upcoming events, and our next meeting, of course. But tomorrow night, if you're interested, the New York Java SIG is doing something different, and I think we may actually follow suit in the next couple of months. These are series of lightning talks at 5 minutes each. I'm happy to have been asked to be one of those 6 speakers. So I'm going to do a quick 5-minute overview on Jakarta no SQL specification and MongoDB, something that I've been contributing, through open source and working with Otavio Santana, who's the spec lead on that. And right after those talks, Bruno Sosa is going to present Grow Your IT Career to the Next Level. And that's the Eventbrite URL to register. And I've had these last 2 up the last couple of months on J Nation, which is coming up next Wednesday, and InfoQ Live is on Tuesday the 22nd. And our next meeting, which I did not put on the slides. So this is available to everybody at any given time. This is evergreen, of course. So we adjust these accordingly. But our next meeting is with our own Scott Selikoff, who's one of our leaders, and he's going to talk about Java certification. And I like his title, where it says Java can be weird, things you learn while studying for Java certification.
So to give just a brief, it's going to be partially just information if you want to get a certification or want to know about certifications or don't know how to start. And then it's also going to be things that you encounter in Java that exist that you may just not be familiar with because you don't think about things like that when you're in some things in Java you don't think about unless you're studying for certification. So that's it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. I actually missed the opportunity to take the exam for, what was it, $25? I forget what the promo was, but in any event.
It was for the 25-year Java anniversary.
That's right, yeah. So, but yeah, and you can see what else is coming up. As I mentioned before, we may follow suit with some lightning talks, and we're going to try to put those together. And then September, as I mentioned earlier, is the Corcus World Tour presentation. We're working with Steve Poole. Steve Poole. And, we'll get something, as soon as they let us know, on the schedule. But we are on the schedule. That's the thing. And then just more recently, we were presented with an opportunity to talk about Java Web Tokens and what you need to know. And this is an interesting area for security. And Dan Moore will be presenting on that in October. So that leaves us November and December to try to, fill those slots. So stay tuned for all that. That's all we do, behind the scenes here at the Garden State Java Group. So with that, it is, well, I don't usually have that, but it is Miller time, as the old saying goes. But you will not find that in my beverage center.
No, but I do definitely want to thank Lucy again for a wonderful session. We learned quite a bit. It was an eye-opener.
And I'm glad even with this virtual format, we were able to make it engaging and interactive, because I much prefer the interaction of talking to people and getting the reactions. So thank you very much. I really enjoyed being here.
Oh, and thank you too.
And you're welcome back.
Awesome. All right, folks, I guess if there's nothing else, we will wish everybody a good night, good rest of the week, and you know, I think it's going to be some kind of nasty weather the rest of the week, so stay dry as well.
Thanks, everybody.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I don't,
everybody.
Thank you guys again. I
Barry,
had fun.
Barry, did you have to stop the meeting?